another episode of the Shusaku Study Project. This is chronologically the last game in a series of 4 that we have for Shusaku Wandan against Nakagawa Junsetsu. It's a 2-stone handicap game. You can see this information in the top right. And if you haven't seen the other games, I highly recommend it. They're very educational. Even though this being 11-year-old Shusaku, there's a couple of things that aren't what we might expect. It's not necessarily his usual the style that we have, like the calm, simple, pretty shapes and so forth. But he also has handicap stones, and his opponents are overly aggressive. So here's the original setup. Before we go further, I should thank the people who contributed to the reviews for this game, who are Itarios, FireScourge, DE, Bugcat, and myself. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So very standard opening here for at least the time approaching, instead of what we would do today, which is take one of the corners, and then standard response again at the time, respond to the approach with an ogema. This is something that I'm pretty sure was just inherited from the Chinese classical period. And so in here, white continues instead of pulling back to a corner, and black is more than happy to play symmetrically. And you'll see here, even if we just look at the board, if you just split the board diagonally, black is looking at more of the board than white, right? And if you look now at the kind of direction for what to do, if white decides to go for this corner, which is kind of a next kind of easy logical step, black takes this, and then black is going to have easy options on 2 sides, which is not great for the development. So white is going to block on the bottom right and is going to have a directionally flexible option for whatever might come, or whatever direction might make sense based on development of the game. So when you hear people talk about how the 4-4 wasn't played until the 20th century, you can point them to this game, this one right here, and you can feel free to look at the date all the way up here and say this was 1841. I'm just saying that's before the 20th century. So again, now black has essentially the initiative, and black chooses a direction in the sense that he breaks the symmetry and offers the beginning of complexities here. So white responds with a Kakari. He's going to operate on developing here, which is what black decided to make bigger, right, by going over here. Now white is trying to play fairly quickly, right? If you look, white has 4 stones in 4 different areas, and almost all 4 stones are they're outnumbered. This is the only one that isn't. Black plays very lightly. This is not the Shusaku diagonal. The Shusaku diagonal is specifically from the Shusaku Fuseki, and you can look at the Shusaku Fuseki on Sensei's library. I'm going to put a link in chat, which will not be helpful to anyone on YouTube, other than seeing that the link exists. But it's worth looking at. I'm sure at some point on this channel there will be a video on the Shusaku Fuseki, because this is the Shusaku Study Project. This diagonal was played originally by Dosaku in the 1600s, late 1600s. At least this is when I saw it the first time. It doesn't mean he was the pioneer for it, but when we talk about this move being a good move, we have to thank Dosaku for it. Now, white has a couple of options here for how to grow. Actually, a lot of them, because all the stones are fairly light. But if you want to consider how black is building strength, you're going to want to deal with the strength and limit it as much as possible. And one of the properties of these 2 stones is the flexibility of their direction. You can go here with those stones, which is very standard. It's often what you're going to see next. And you can also go all the way out here in any of these positions. So from this stone, you've got 2 directions. So white is going to limit that by doing a very large extension this way. Now 1, 2, 3, 4. It's very hard to say these 2 stones are connected. So white is kind of doing his own fuseki here by creating areas of possible complications on the board. Now, but as I've just mentioned, these stones have 2 options for development, and this move has removed 1, right? Imagine now white does this. Black is kind of stuck having to get out in one of a number of ways, so it's not gone, those stones are undead, but their ability to impact the board is limited, and now they're reduced to having to escape, and which means white has taken control. So this makes this area important for black to play in to maintain the advantage of the position. So black goes here, pretty unsurprisingly. Right? Now it's still possible to get to the corner from here. Right? It's easy enough. Looks like you can get to the corner from here. That's simple. We've seen this in other games. We will see this in more games. But white is going to operate on the expensive stone here and is going to jump. Now, this jump is often a mistake if you don't have the ladder. Which ladder? Well, we can take a quick look. If black pushes through here and white blocks, now when you have this situation, black can cut in both directions, right? The rule generally is to cut in a direction you don't want, but white is so weak that white can't sacrifice everything too easily. So if you go here, white will probably just block here in order to maintain some kind of possible life shape in the corner by playing over here next. And then black gets this. And this gives you a ladder. Right? So if you want to play this in your own games, make sure you check the ladder first. So black is going to let this position be. He doesn't really care. He's got the 4/4 stones and he's got this stone on the 4th line, whereas all of white stones are on the 3rd line. And while we often talk about the control of the 4th line being a thing that really started in the 20th century, you see that begin to happen with Dosaku and then with Shusaku in the way they elevate their stones from the 3rd line. They do play on the 3rd line first. That's still the pattern, the meta, but they start to aim for control of the center to control the fight. And so here he's going to let this be because he's got this impact here on the 4th line that negates a little bit these 2 stones, makes them harder to be useful. And he's going to now create a directionality, right? He's building this area, which might build this, and then these 2 stones are going to become weaker in response. Now, white has to respond on this side. White could tenuki, right? But it's a 2-stone handicap game. There's not so much you can do about it. So white is going to expand, and it's hard to say claim the right side, but it's going to develop the right side. And as an approach to the Yogema, among other things, this move is open now. It's a thing that may or may not happen in the game, but it is somaji that exists. So black is going to do a double approach in the bottom right corner. And you'll notice this is a high double approach. Right? So again, we are developing with fighting in mind. And then in response to this, white is going to start a Joseki. This is not something we see much today anymore, as far as I know. I haven't seen this in any of the kind of modern pro games I've looked at. But this position still does kind of exist. Like you want to keep the 2 stones split, right? You're weakening this stone comparatively a fair amount. And if this stone is weaker, then this stone is a little stronger because that's how strength works on the board, right? It's relative strength. So black is going to continue in the direction that black mostly cares about, right? Which is developing this side. White blocks to maintain strength towards the corner. Black steps in. It's a reduction of black's own liberties, but it's also a question about what's allowed to get cut. And white protects the important cut, which is this one. Because if white plays here, and black plays here, it doesn't really matter. Like if you assume this move doesn't do much because black can play here and then black keeps Sente, right? But if you think about the next move for white, if it's this way, you're gonna make these stones stronger and you're gonna weaken this one. If you go out this way, black gets to strengthen this way anyway, and these stones are still relatively safe. So this is not a useful result on the board for white. Which is why when black plays here, oh man, I have apparently forgotten everything about how this game works. We're here, and we're here, and we protect this cut. So now black takes this move once, because this creates cutting points in the shape, and gives white a couple of things to worry about. And that's the end of the Joseki as known. And then black steps up here. Now, this is not really cuttable. You have enough liberties here, and there's no ladder because of the extra liberties here. So this is a fairly safe move. And it's also easier, like, because the simplest way to say this is this growth here means that if white steps in directly, black can cover and build a ton of strength while white defends here, which will be a problem for these stones, this stone, for anything else on the board. So black is making a show of strength, saying, I'm going to build strength faster than you because I have a 2-stone handicap. What are you going to do about it? White captures once. If you count the liberties, 1, 2, 3, 4, you are at the beginning of a Damezumari, right? You're at the beginning of a liberty race here. So it is something you want to be careful about. But black doesn't have to be super worried because, again, the push and cut still doesn't work. So this might be something where there's a setup for a ko. It might make this follow-up here more dangerous, or an approach on this side more dangerous. But it's an early setup move. And so black is going to continue to set up and is going to begin to challenge white now more directly by cutting. Or separating is more accurate. Because now there's some strength here, and white has to deal with that. And there's some strength here. This stone is okay because it can go over here, it can go over here, it's fine. But the difficult part is whichever side white moves from, black is going to profit on the other side. So that is a tricky position to be in. And it also means that maybe the right thing to do is not to reply right away. Maybe there's other things you can do on the board to develop the board a little further and figure out what to do on the left side. So white is going to push. And then black is going to protect very lightly this way. Now this is a 3-point mistake according to Katago. There's a variation in the SGF for this game. Yeah, it's unclear if C6 or C11 is more important, and so as a result, you don't know what you don't know what you should develop first. So come back to it later. There's a variation in the SGF for what Katago wants to do here, which is basically to block this and let the cut happen and deal with it. This is clearly a much stronger variation here, but it has a bit of agi, and honestly, it doesn't matter all that much. And the reason why it doesn't matter all that much here is because this is the same idea that Shusaku has. Right, Shusaku has the same strategy that Katago wants to implement, but Katago has a different tactic for doing it. So if you want to look at Katago's tactic, look at the SGF. So When black plays here, white steps in, which makes some sense. It is where black should have played, right? So, but one of the results here is that now, if white does anything else here, it just blocks and deals with it. It does very often do that. Not all the time. I think maybe in this game there's a variation where Katago just goes, screw it, and says I don't need this. But it does tend to prefer the, we'll call it the stronger variation, right? But it's also important to note that for the most part, we are looking at a human being who's a very talented 11-year-old. It is Shusaku, and he's got a 2-stone handicap. So he gets to spend his stones however he wants to ensure his advantage. And I think that's what he's doing here. Right? So when you look at the board position from here, these stones might feel like they're very, very weak, but they're really just, they're aji for black, and they're aji for white to deal with. This stone, anything that white does with this stone is going to give these stones a chance to get stronger. So black doesn't really have to play here first. Black can wait. Black can come back later and maybe develop strength, maybe just jump off, maybe just sacrifice them lightly. But these two stones do one thing. They make the board position a little more difficult for white to deal with. So white, again, doesn't really deal with them. White is moving towards the biggest area, which is this massive framework black is laying out here. And it's kind of stepping in saying, is there something I can do? Is there a way I can save these stones? Can I develop something on this side that makes it easier for me to deal with both without black profiting? I mean, this is not even, it's not even 4% because it's a 2-stone handicap, right? So this is a 0.8% loss if we want to talk about statistics. All right, so because black is still up 16 points. So now black is going to kick. This is it's hard to do a standard Joseki here for a couple of reasons, and one of them is black is 2 stones up, right? Black already has the extension, and black already has the pincer. Now the pincer has this stone on this side, but still, when you look at this position, black has options. And the option black chooses is this one, right? This stone counterattacks the extension here. It also works pretty well with this stone and with this stone. So now we have something developing here and something much wider and much more open developing here. Now here, you want to figure out what to do next. And what you want to do next is operate on these two things. But if you move away from these two things, if that's the direction you take, then black will just profit. So the pattern here is a forcing move first. This is the shape point for this very large shape. Both groups are going to be fine independently, but there's going to be weird follow-ups, whether they're going to be here, here, even that. Any of the follow-ups would be now stronger on the other side. So black has a reason to reply. If you look at Katago here, if you explore the position, you will find that pretty much black can just throw a stone in that area and then black is fine. That's largely because black has a 2-stone handicap still, right? So it's important to note, we have one variation noted that I'm going to walk through, which is what if black chooses this? Because it's normal to think about the elephant jump as us. And it's important to look at the way this exchange continues, because this is not necessarily something obvious, but it makes a ton of sense as you see it develop. White would shoulder hit here, so offering a split. Right? This is also offering, it's asking how much can I take? Black will naturally split. White descends. Black honey to say, can I separate? White honey to say, can I connect? When black blocks, white makes a tiny bit of shape here. And then black, to avoid many forcing moves, just blocks here. That lets white play this diagonal. And then black will cut. And black will play at the shape point. Now, I'm going to play a couple more moves here to see the development, but you can see how the sequence with some protection here to reinforce this leads to an exchange that both players can be relatively content with. Now here, this is actually a fun forcing move. Black can't actually ignore this move because it would be very bad to just lose all of this. So white can play this right now and get stronger here, which puts some more pressure on these stones. Right, and then come back here, which strengthens the group on the other side to again add more pressure on these stones. Not significant like end of the game pressure, but pressure. And then you can live. And then this move is, I like this move a lot just because it's one of those very Katago, we got to fight here with liberties and we're going to kind of like not solve this right now. And this is the end of the local sequence, as white then would go here. This is where this goes. So I think this is a very interesting exchange. I certainly would not have come up with this on my own. I'm not yet strong enough. And, you know, I'll be Katago down level someday. Maybe. But this was a fun exchange. And it's fun to look at this trade here and managing the strength here this way. Now this is as even an exchange as Katago can manage, which means black is still up 16 points, right? But at the very least, this is what Katago thinks gives the most fighting chance. Oh boy, I'm just gonna undo these things. Undone this. Undo that. I guess actually this is the position we have right now. Yeah, okay. So now that we undo all of this, you can see the potential in this position when white plays this forcing move. It's hard to tell whether Shusaku and Nakagawa knew this was there or not. It's very possible they did. But black chooses something a little different. Black says, if I make points now, then it's much harder for you to win later because you have to make up even more points. So when we go here, white decides to jump. And this, of course, creates a position where black can wedge or white can wedge. It's a very light position for black to for white to handle, but white has to handle it very carefully. So, of course, it makes perfect sense for black to wedge here and connect. And then when white continues to play very lightly to attach here, and you see how this is the normal sequence if black ignores, right? It is the normal shape point very locally, so white is working to make this a kind of normal, okay shape point to hit. Black is also able to just respond kind of normally, and then there's a lot of shape weaknesses white to handle. So white is gonna get a forcing move here. And then we have a question about what white does next. Now, white's next move is going to be either in this area or probably in this area, because that's kind of been the focus from this exchange, right? Growing to help these two stones, this area and this area. It's the same shape. It is the exact shape. Yes, it is the exact same shape as over here, where white could go down or black could go up. And so white here decides to play fast, which again makes some sense in a two-stone handicap game. And so white attaches over here, which I don't know about you, but I think is an extremely cool move. I wouldn't have come up with it. I think it's a lot of fun. There's only really one problem with this stone, and that this stone is a 5-point mistake. Because, like FireScourge pointed out, black should just like play here now. And that's because the move that white should play is this. Now here's the thing. Here's the thing. The reason white doesn't play this is because of black's follow-up. Right? Black absolutely is going to play here. And that hurts. And you know how much this hurts? Again, this is one of those, we've looked at this together as the Shusaku study project. We've looked at it with Katago. And the growth is just, it's a thing that's tricky to manage. White just like plays away, ignores that stone completely, comes back to it later, maybe. And then black says, all right, well, I want you to have to suffer a little bit. And then white expands here. We get a honey. And black just straight up double honeys here. Just straight up. And then we get another one here. And this is kind of all to develop this area and this area. So this is the problem for white, is that this is too straightforward a sequence, right? There's just not enough complications on this board for white to possibly outplay black. So that doesn't work. And this is the reason, I think, why white doesn't play this gote move to fix his shape in the bottom, and instead plays this very fast move. So the interesting thing is, again, that even if black takes advantage of this, which is just so much stronger because this is just super solid territory, white doesn't even respond here. That is how weird this position is. We're like, it's just gote for white to play here regardless. So if black plays here, then white will just play somewhere else. But either way, when white plays here, black is content to follow and challenge a little bit. So black plays here, which is, again, it's a 4-point mistake because black should go down here, but what are you going to do? And this begins a little bit of a dance of the 4-point mistakes. White should play here. So work with me. There's variations in the game, like in the SGF, to show you what should happen at every point in time as they play stones other places. But it's not worth really going into it because it's all kind of the same idea. It's just different development on the board. And then black pushes one more time here. And, black is trying to keep white splits, right? If black gets to play this stone, then this is a lot of territory and this is a very weak group. So this move is pretty strong from that perspective. If this group is floating, it also means this stone is very useful because now it's a base for attack. White has to either try to cut or run away, but now it means that as white does something on this side, black can push and pressure and then attack this, because this might not, it's easy to think of this as a wall, even though it's pretty thin, but this doesn't have eyes. And this is well, large tripod and nice move. This is all cuttable, right? There's a lot of cuts here that are possible. So this is not thickness yet. So that's a thing to keep an eye on, is this is not thickness yet. And it's not alive. So white is going to push. This is an attempt, it's a dynamic attempt to counterattack. Right? Because if this gets strong enough, then these stones might be weak enough. So black jumps. When white plays this move, then black takes advantage of this position here. Now the extremely ironic thing about this position is that white decides to play here, which kind of shores up the cuts by you go here, I go here, I get, I can, by pulling backwards a little bit, I get to manage the complications. This is also a 5-point mistake, because at this point in the game, white should just push and deal with the sequence, which the sequence after this, again, ignore this. This is bigger. Black responds to this. And then you cut here this way. And you can kind of see how, even fairly simply, now white is able to take a timing to put some pressure on the black stones, right? Like black protects here when white Han is here and black Atari. White connects, and then you start a more complicated sequence, which we don't go all the way into it, but you see here that the position that you end up with is one where white is at least has something that resembles some fighting strength. Black has a group that's a little bit on the weak side, although again, this is 1, 2, 3, 4 liberties. So there's something that there's like options that black has here. This is white is not very strong. But at least white has something, right? So white should not respond to this move and should take advantage of that to build some strength here, where the fight is gonna come out. So unfortunately, that's not what white did. It turns out it was difficult to play even a 2-stone handicap against 11-year-old or 12-year-old Shusaku when he was a kid. So the thing that's interesting for me about all this is you get to see this potential sequences here, and then they're in your mind when you see the rest of the game, right? When you see it develop. So here white blocks, and black's response is to get a step ahead. Very simply, just block the shape. And it's also going to poke a little bit at cutting points, right? Like detachments, cuts. It's going to make a couple of things a tiny bit easier, but it's not a lot on this side. It's really just getting these stones out. So white counterattacks, we're going to say dynamically, by playing a move that can try to wrap around here, cut through, seal things in. So black keeps the focus on what's truly important and is going to keep the stones connected and out. And then, because this stone is by itself and very weak, white plays the boomerang shape, the big bend, I think it's called. Along with maybe a dog face if you want to look at this particular shape. And by the way, this is also a horse face, so like it's all the shapes, right? To kind of work on keeping these stones kind of connected. The weak point here really is this particular shape. There's a lot of black strength, so it's really a thing to keep an eye on. But black is not worried about that just yet. Black has a weak group, so black extends, and it's also worth noting the difference between white getting that stone and black getting that stone, right? This group is a lot weaker. So when black plays here, white kind of owes a move on this side and jumps out. So this gives black an opportunity to do something. Now black has options. This is a like 3-ish point mistake that black plays next, but it's again not the end of the world. Again, the strategy is the same. The application is a bit different, the strategy is the same. So Shusaku plays this. This is not the best move on the board, or the move that Katago would like to play, which I'm not sure are always the same thing. Katago would just like to play here. And again, there's a variation that I don't want to get into because the strategy is the same. Basically, it's a little cleaner way for black to apply strategy. And the strategy is seal in white. It's very simple. Very simple. I should probably put the cuts, otherwise nothing makes sense. Once you have the cut, white strengthens here. And this actually turns out to be a bit of a mistake by white, because white should help this group now. And so what it means is there's a sequence here. When you have this, the cut here is activated. So black ends up having to play a forcing move here, so you start to deal with the weaknesses in this shape right now. To give you a sense of how close it is in the fight, this connection here is a 3-point mistake. So it's very close when you count and you evaluate the board position. But as a result, now black gets to play the move that Katago wanted to play in the first place. And now you can cut, extending here, you can seal in. It's getting to be a bit of a tricky position for white to handle effectively as far as control of the center. And you'll notice we are building off of here. All of this seems to be to surround this area, but also to deal with the agi of these two stones. So white plays here, and he is clearly working on expanding this group, right? Growing on this, limiting the impact of this group in the center, and beginning to say, can I just claim a good chunk of this area? Because if he has these stones and they're connected, and he's got this reduced, then this is a very weak group that needs a lot of help. So this is very much a fight on this board right now. But I also haven't pointed out the last group that's in danger. This group, because this group is not connected to anything else right now. It doesn't have eyes. It's not thickness. It's barely past the sector line. So this group, and this group are in a surrounding race. Black plays a move that I think is very cool here. Black is going to separate the group, or ask white how the group gets to be separated. White says he would like these stones to not die, which I think is fair. And then black gets to say that he got connect 4 and he wins, which indicates black just doesn't really know what's happening on the board, because that's not the game they're playing. But black is 12. Give him a break. Now there's another thing here that's worth noting from the Connect 4, right? Is this stone, this cut is getting dangerous. Because again, this here, these stones don't have 2 eyes. These stones aren't completely connected yet. So white is going to try to keep these stones separated from these stones, keep this group going, connected, keep the pressure on these stones, so that maybe if black cuts, it's not a big deal. It's a fair reasoning. I think that makes a ton of sense. And black looks at this board position and decides that, again, this is a surrounding fight, right? We've got a group here that's alive, that has a group here that's not super connected, and is basically a dead group trying to fight for life. It's fighting this dead group for life, and it's fighting this dead group for life. So black is going to say, can I make an eye over here? Can I surround? Can I just get a bunch of strength? Can I weaken this group further and get an additional move that will be very helpful to me? And also note how this group, this stone puts this group ahead of this group, right? This move puts white behind the sector line. It's thin, it's a thin sector line because of this stone right here. But it's a thing. And so white says, no, I don't really want you to just be alive here. And so black reinforces. Black says, okay, now this group needs a bunch of help. What are you going to do about this group? And by the way, what I threaten this group, I might make points on this side because these two stones are pretty weak. Right, so this is an effort. Surround, and then surround. This is getting kind of unclear, but it's still a surrounding fight, right? So white is going to threaten to cut here. He can't really cut directly. He can maybe cut, but it doesn't matter all that much if the effort to take these stones means these stones die. It's not a good enough trade as far as the amount of territory that gets traded off and strength. So that doesn't work so well. Now this is actually an example where, if CQ is still in chat, this is actually an example of Katago not doing block and deal with it. Shusaku plays this move. This move is apparently a 2.5 point mistake. It's not a huge deal, but it works, right? Now, it's worth noting here that because there's a kind of a shortage of liberties here, this is kind of what the reason we think black played this move is that it's hard for white to push and cut because it leads to a ko that can be a very heavy ko. If white goes this way after this, then black can push, which would mean that white would block an Atari here, but black can counter Atari. And there's no good solution here, so when white takes, black Atari. And this is the beginning of the ko. And this can hurt a lot, right? This can be, if this group connects to this group, it's going to be a very, very hard game for white. So this stone actually stays here. No, sorry. This stone here. This stone is what I'm starting with. Yeah. So this was the reason behind Shusaku playing here. It turns out black is up 20 points, right? So at this point, Katago's suggestion is, okay, well, why don't you just block? Like, why don't you just, like, connect your stones and not care? White ends up having to go back, connect this way. And then it's an exchange of strength again. Black plays a move here to stabilize a little bit. White extends once to stabilize, black extends. White also extends. This feels like a much more peaceful set of exchanges. And when white turns here, black just connects. And this is beginning, again, it's an exchange of strength on the board. It keeps black up 20 points because it's a best exchange for both players. But you can see how the connection is just kind of good enough. Right? There's no reason for black to not do that. So here black is being a little more aggressive, saying your shape is a little thin, and I'm not completely sure you can really do something about it. So because white doesn't want the ko, that very heavy ko, white has to block this way. And so black gets to push. Now that this is fixed, white kind of has to do this cut. And then black begins the complication, because now black actually is a little bit ahead in strength here. So white Atari. Black extends. And now, because the ladder doesn't actually work for white, because this is a single stone, right? White needs to connect these stones together. And that means black finally does get to connect. Now he has to connect here. If he doesn't, it's going to be a bigger problem. But they have to fix their shape first. Now white fixes the next shape. This helps white get out. But of course, the next element is if black doesn't respond to this, white can now push here one more time, and then the ladder is good. So black counters. Now here, I'm not gonna show the variation. Again, it's in the SGF if you want to look at it. But Katago thinks white should cut here and start spending the Aji built up over here to resolve some of the complications. So when white plays here instead, this is a 5-point mistake. And at this point, black is up 38 points, according to Katago. So like the fight is not going well. Right? Like white has already lost another 2 handicap stones. So black says, okay, I will seal you in if that's what you want me to do. And then black extends here. So it turns. So white has to turn because Atari, right? And then black turns and cuts. Power triangle. You hadn't seen K8 before. That? The way the light plays off your stones made you think you needed stronger glasses for a second? Oh, I'm sorry. I will have to make an adjustment. Is the focus changing? Are you talking about J9, like this move for white? FireScourge, is that what you're talking about? Or this particular empty triangle for black? This is actually a very fun game to look at with Katago and in general, because there's an empty triangle here that's... oh, yes, it was. This was a very cool move for black. I was just about to say. It's fun to see the empty triangle, the power triangle instead of the empty triangle. And here you see it again. And this is one of the reasons why, by the way, when people tell you, oh, the Japanese, they play the good shapes, they don't play the aggressive moves, etc., etc., you can point them to this game. Here's a game where we played a 4-4 in the opening, and we got a power triangle here. It's an ugly shape, for sure, but it is very effective. Soviet Blobfish, let me know if the focus changes or if something goes off. Something doesn't work. Oh, you're just saying because of the shadow. Okay. So anyway, with this cut here, right? You can't white can't run to safety with this group. So that means this group has to find life inside somewhere. But there are bigger fish to fry. There's other moves you can play first there's other forcing moves you can play to get something. So white is going to say, maybe I can counter over here by taking these stones or do something in that direction. Now, this is a 3-point mistake, not a very big mistake for white, but Katago would prefer to start living, basically finish living and then making territory on the right side, or kind of closing off this area. So it would begin with a sequence here, black would connect, and then you would go and live. This is, again, it's in the SGF. You can look at it when white plays here, black gets to extend. White turns, because otherwise it's just full of sadness everywhere. And this threatens to kill while maintaining shape with these stones, right? It's allowing these stones to exist. So here, Katago actually would like to play this, but this leads to a ko for semi-eye. And look, Shusaku is up 37 points, 40 points, whatever. Shusaku does not need a ko here. So this is supposedly a 4-point mistake. I'm gonna go with Shusaku didn't want to play a ko. That is how I'm gonna interpret this. You're welcome to suggest something else. But that's where I am in my analysis. And also, of course, it does give this forcing move, like white has to respond to it. So black just super steady connects here, bamboo joint. And now black, this group is much more able to make a connection to the corner. Finally, white comes back because now the group is completely sealed in, right? So now white bumps here because that's going to make better eye shape. So black is going to challenge the eye shape, which, you know, is the normal thing to do. And then, again, you are welcome to point people to this game when they tell you that the Japanese just played the pretty shapes. Because black plays a square. Welcome to the Power Cube Tsuji, as named by FireScourge. This defends the stone, and it leaves a connection for J14 if necessary. And of course it means that if white plays here to Atari, it's a snapback, right? It's just down to 1 liberty. So this is how you fight, right? White plays here, threatens to connect underneath. And then black is going to just play here, remove easy access to forcing moves for better shape here. So white gets another forcing move over here. And black is just going to connect. Now again, black, the AI thinks that Katago should just... The AI thinks that white should just live here. White descends here once. So black says, can I take away this eye shape? Is that a thing I can do? And white says, well, you're not really removing eye shape. I got a forcing move here that you're gonna want to connect to, otherwise you're gonna be sad. And then when white pushes here, because of this descent, it's tricky for black to block. So black protects this way. White gets to descend, and then now white can either connect out this way or live here with a second eye, right? So the group is alive now, which is good. It's like hard work, but it was there. And so now, if this is alive, how's the shift on the board? Like, what do we look at now that we're not fighting for this? This is fine, because this is so weak. It's gonna live. This white group over here has to do something. I flutter mouse. These stones are okay, but you know, there's still some forcing moves that white has that may have to respond to. And this group is still technically not alive, right? It's strong, but it's not alive. Now, here, I have lost a move, I think. No, sorry, I just didn't play it yet. Black turns around. Now, this is fine. It's alive. We're good to go. Black just turns around and now says, okay, we're going to go back. I'm going to strengthen my group. And I'm going to start making you worried about this group that if it dies, it's the end of the game. Hello, Wild Nuggets. Welcome to the stream. Right, sorry. I'm processing the game, saying hi to people. My brain can't do all these complicated things at once. And so now white turns here. This is not a particularly sente move because that stone doesn't do anything and it doesn't really give a real eye. Maybe, like maybe if black plays this. But there's bigger fish to fry. I'm gonna sneeze. Where did I put the fan? There it is. So black plays a forcing move now on this side first to finish. That closes the second eye, and then we're good to go. And then black continues surrounding this group. Now, again, I'd like to point out, if this group dies, the game is completely over. Can we count? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34. 34 point swing, and black is already up. I mean, maybe this is why black is up 40 points. Maybe this group is already dead. It feels like this group has some issues, to be fair. It's getting worse and worse. But black has this, so white has points somewhere, right? Now here, I don't understand why. I mean, I sort of do from the variation you get, but it doesn't make a ton of sense why white saves these two stones. Like, it's just not really worth it. And it feels like a preparation for something else. I don't know. This is a very strange move. Katago thinks you should just play here and protect, and just kind of give a chance to build something in this area. Again, I can understand why you might not want to play this kind of move, because then black gets to play this. And then you end up in a more complicated position here. But you kind of have to accept that that's the board position you're in. And that this is what's going to... These are the moves, right? White fights fate, I suppose, and connects. Now this is apparently a 10-point mistakes, which brings black up to plus 56. And this is the first time... Well, it's not true. But now Katago says black has a 100% chance to win. So around 50 points seems to be the cutoff for Katago to go, you can't lose this game. Or you shouldn't be able to, which is a whole different story. So, once you've saved, black pokes at the weak shape, which makes sense, and you start to carve out the larger corner as well, because why not take more points? And then white plays here. Fairly nice, simple, standard. Black is going to poke at it once. White is not going to kind of give the double Atari super easily. He's going to play a move to back away and get a connection going, however tenuous. And then black clamps. Again, we're going to keep on asking questions about how the group is actually going to live and what's actually going to happen here. And white is going to aim for something to happen on the outside. When white connects underneath, black says, "Can I take this one stone? Is that okay? Is that a fair trade? Are we cool with this?" And then white creates a ladder breaker on this side and builds some strength against the corner. This is an effort to have some complications to make some points. So black makes another ladder breaker on this side, which you know, makes some sense. You get the group strength. This group is getting pretty weak here because if it does it has to connect to something, but this doesn't have two eyes yet. It can maybe make them, but it starts to get a little dicey. And that's actually why white plays here, which unfortunately turns out to be another like 10-point mistake. The AI wants to continue on this side to kind of really resolve this, get it cleared up, and so forth. But it's not. This just is not white's day or week, really. So black pushes here and Itarios. Again, since we've seen that white should play here, black should also play here, kind of cut off the stones entirely. But black is not interested in this, honestly. He just wants to close out the game. He's up. He probably knows that he's up and that the game is over. So they're now going to resolve and figure out how to really close out the game. So white says, can I connect all these stones out? Black says, I would rather you didn't. Now this is interesting because certainly, you know, white could double Atari here, but the double Atari doesn't do a whole lot, right? Because these stones don't really get extra liberties or connections from there, and this is the only stone that really matters, so the double Atari isn't really a meaningful double Atari. So white comes back here to block that. And then black says, can I take these stones? White protects, which apparently is another 8-point mistake. This is just not, again, this game is just not going well for white. Just big fights. White extends here. Black just says, can I make you wonder what is going to live? Save something somewhere? White tries to make some complications here. Black pokes at the shape very naturally. And you might be concerned saying, but we're weakening the one stone. It's like, well, yes, but look how weak white is. Right? Like, white has to worry about all of these stones dying. So white connects and says, maybe I'll make a corner. But black gets to ask, can I do something to this group? And white has to protect it. So black comes back here. And then, of course, white, again, has to connect, because otherwise things die horribly. Black continues to just inch his way through here and connect and continue to say, these aren't going to be points, and you're going to have to deal with it. White finally plays this move to try and get some sort of edge. And so when black extends here, white connects up here. And then, now that we're here, and it might actually be an impact on the Liberty race here, black just connects, saves, whatever, done. And then white says, maybe I can still connect this group out and live. So black turns, saying you don't get to connect these stones. White threatens to cut. Black connects. And then when white says, can I please connect and live? Black says, okay, well, look, let's be serious here. If you really want this group to live, I'm going to kill this. So black cuts off all of these stones. And now they're dead. And now white resigns. So yeah, this is well, let me close out for YouTube. I try not to put kind of like spoilers for other games in YouTube. So thank you everyone for watching this fourth game against Nakagawa Junsetsu. I hope you found it exciting and informative. As usual, the link to the SGF is gonna be in the description of the YouTube video, as well as the link to the project. You should join us. We need more good people to do this. I'm also beginning to work on a web app to make all of this easier to contribute. Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot more games coming. I'm pretty sure the current pace we're at, the Ear Reddening game is coming in like 4 years, something like that, 3 years. So again, we need more people so we can make these games go by faster. Anyway, I will see you all in the next game. By all means, leave comments, like, subscribe, do all the things you do on YouTube, and I'll see you all in Twitch, in Discord, in the comments on YouTube somewhere, live at Congress.